Hey, this is Kyle Crawford from Strong Dads. Strong Dads podcast would love to thank the Crimers Beer House for coming alongside of us. The Crimers Beer House was started in 1982 by the Crimer family, and since that time, they have definitely become a Cincinnati favorite. So if you're looking for an incredible meal in an incredible setting, definitely go down to Route 128 and check out the Crimers Beer House.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson being joined by Kyle Crawford for another great show of Strong Dads.
Great show.
How you doing, Kyle? What's going on?
I am great. I am excited. I think today, as we're recording, the weather is especially like in the 60s, so my golf swing is going to be itching. I gotta get it together.
People, he's obsessed with the golf thing. He just went out and got fitted for golf clubs. Like, you know, what's wrong with the ones down there at Walmart? You know, I picked up a set at Walmart.
I have a strong sense of jealousy, I think is what that is, Earl.
And then he's coming in, he's like, oh, yeah, so I got these clubs, like, I can get 80 feet height and a spin rate of 8,000. I'm like, what are you even talking about?
I don't know either. I just know the guy said that's really good. I'm like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah. And so I'm like, so I guess your Walmart clubs aren't going to hang with this, right? That's pretty cool. So it's certainly not spring yet.
It is not.
But,
We're
man,
we're
itching.
We're itching.
How about that Super Bowl game?
It was fun. It was a
legit game.
It was.
It was. The worst thing about a Super Bowl game is a blowout.
Yeah.
I mean, you're like, oh, all this hoopla. Now I'm just going to sit here and eat and talk about stuff I don't care about.
I did hear, I think the viewership was like up crazy ridiculous from last year, which is crazy because last year, remember, it was Tom Brady and Mahomes. So those are two legit quarterbacks. So I think they said the viewership was up pretty significantly.
I think the underdog factor with the Bengals across the country, people, I didn't see an actual poll, but I would say that they probably had a bigger support base than the Rams just because people like to cheer for the underdog.
Yep.
So,
I knew a couple people who actually went to the Super Bowl, and they said this stadium was incredible.
I did hear that. I have a buddy that went as well, and he's like something you've never seen before. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Cool.
That's cool. We'll see. I think at the very least, I think there's hope in Cincinnati for the future.
Yeah. Like we talked a little bit about that, the idea that you've got such young guys to build around.
Yeah.
And hopefully, you know, we got a little bit of time on some big contracts, so hopefully that's going to hang out there and not screw us over in the next 6 months.
That's what I was going to say. Bengals, don't screw this up, okay?
Can you just get some offensive line? Okay, like I'm not a coach, but I see a need.
Jenny always tells the girls, you see a need, fill a need. So Bengals, fill that need of an offensive line, would you?
Yeah, please.
I'm not even a Bengals fan, and I'm like, bro, I feel for you, Joe. Like, golly, how many times are you going to land on your back?
You know, the thing I like about Joe Burrow is his cool, but sometimes when you look at a guy, you're like, man, that guy's just a stud.
Yeah.
He's kind of, not to take anything away from him, but he's kind of a slight build. He's a little bit like a Tom Brady. And like Brady's not impressive in terms of like this muscle man.
Right.
And I'm thinking like this guy's kind of a slight build and he's just getting hammered. I mean, when he went down that one time and you saw that wince on his face over that knee, I'm like, oh, there goes, not just a game, there goes career. Yep. Career's out the door, all because we don't want to have an offensive line. I'm simplifying. I think probably they do, but
Yep.
All right. So go Bengals. Let's keep that one rolling.
All right. Anyways, today. So today, what are we going to get into?
We are going to talk a little bit today about the craziness of life and how we need to get it together and figure it out. You and I were talking just before we hit the record button for the next 2 weeks or for the last 2 weeks and then a couple weeks forward. My life's been just kind of crazy. I got projects going.
Sure.
I've got some travel I've got to do. I've got some deadlines on some things, which, as I just said, that one just clicked in my mind that I have to take care of before noon today. And so it's like, man, sometimes these waves come in, and you all of a sudden can get overwhelmed. But something's got to give, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so what's going to give?
Yeah.
What are you going to sacrifice? And I think sometimes it's easy for us to sacrifice things that we can take for granted.
Sure.
Whether it be family or our health or something, and you keep doing that, you're going to pay a price for that.
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about like what do we do with crazy? What happens? How do we keep from being overwhelmed? How do we keep from sacrificing something that is of greater value in the long haul?
Sure. Yeah. So we're going to get into the idea of the whole idea of work-life balance, and you had brought this up, and maybe I should have known. We actually have done this show before, a really early on episode, but I also think there's a lot to be said about revisiting this very idea. Sometimes there's that constant reevaluation period where you just need to take some time, like, okay, I'm a year, 2 years removed from evaluating where I find myself as far as balancing everything I have going on in life, right? I think there's a lot of good that can come from doing those evaluations, especially, bringing your wife alongside of you and be like, hey, let's go over this. We've talked before the idea of, going to your finances and making sure your finances are in a good place. I think there's a lot to be said about that. But I think this idea of work-life balance and making sure that all the pieces of your life are kind of put in perspective and put in the right place. And so I think it's good to revisit this. So hopefully we get something out of this.
No doubt about it. That's hit reset buttons all the time because, very few things are one and done, perfectly fixed. I just was showing you my bathroom that
it's looking good.
That I'm redoing.
It's looking good.
And you're looking at me like, yeah, you're going to be redoing that one here and another. So I'm having a little bit of a floor issue on some of the vinyl planking, and I'm like, do I really want to tear it all up? So I don't know. Well, tune in. We'll see whether I tear it all up and redo it. I don't know. I don't know where my heart is on that one yet.
I like it. So, yeah, before we get into it, let's thank our sponsors, Strong Dads. We would like to thank Casey's Outdoor Solutions for coming alongside of us. Really do appreciate them. Located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Check them out. Let them know how much we really do appreciate them. And, yeah, thanks so much for Casey's Outdoor Solutions.
All right. Also want to thank the Crimers Beer House located outside of Cleves, Ohio on Route 128. And so for any of your fine dining or just to go get a burger and a beer, go down to Crimers Beer House. Really cool place down there. So we want to thank the Crimers and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring Strong Dads.
I like it. So, yeah, so, Merle, when we were discussing and trying to come up with different topics to bring to you guys, at the time when we were discussing it, my work life, full transparency, my work life, I was struggling. I was kind of in a little bit of a rut. I know we talked about this before, going on the golf course and just kind of picking your brain and venting a little bit about some of the things going on at work. Obviously, I love what I do. I find a great deal of value in what I do. But things weren't good. 2 weeks ago we did a whole show on morale, and that was one of the things that was really kind of getting me down a little bit. And I think this plays part into that. This idea of the work-life balance. This is something I'm very fortunate as a fireman. My time away from work, I have a lot of it. Right, when I'm at work, I'm all in.
Yeah, it's 24-hour shift. So I tease you all the time about you're off again today, but I'm teasing because I know he's doing 24 hours straight.
Yep.
And you do a couple 24 hours straight. You're in 48 hours,
yep.
And you haven't done anything but be at work. So I'll cut you a little break.
I appreciate
on
that.
Yeah.
Thanks. But no, I think the idea of work and a lot of the parts that come along with work, I think a lot of men can relate to that, because I don't know about you, Merle, man, I find a lot of worth and I put a lot of value in the work in which I do. And I think a vast majority of men, I don't know if it's how God created us, which I do believe it is. It is partially because of how the way God created us, but I also think that men just naturally want to work. I think that's something that is instilled maybe at a young age for men, or if it's something when we get into it, we do find that value. So I think the idea of work does play a huge part. It's a huge part of a life for a man, and I think that it's good to talk about.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about work, we've seen guys that have fallen into because we all get tired of work at times, right?
Yeah.
Like, man, I just need a break. And the idea of, you know what, I'm going to retire, or I'm going to take a government handout, or I'm going to cut back. What you find is that it doesn't take long for guys to become extremely self-centered, and then other parts of their life start to fall apart. And so we have to be careful. Like, yes, we need to create the balance of work, but to just say, I'm not working anymore is a really good recipe to messing your life up.
Oh, yeah.
It gives us that purpose And God calls us to have purpose and service. Now, whether you're doing paid work or not, that's debatable, okay? We have plenty of friends who spend a ton of time volunteering, but it's on their calendar. It's like what they do. They go out and they have purpose in that. So I think it's important to remember why we should work.
Yep. So this idea of work, Merle, and this is something I can't necessarily speak on, so I'm gonna pass over to you. This idea of kind of the progression of work. So as you guys out there, depending on what stage in life you're at, Merle, what would you say, are some of the challenges that you face when it comes to the idea of work-life balance, starting in your 20s when you're getting into the workforce, obviously now much more senior in your work life. Like, how do you see that progression of what work life looked like in your 20s to now, in your 50s?
One thing that I've learned to capture out of especially men that I've worked with is I've never heard an older man say, "I wish I would have worked more." Okay. And what that tells me is, just a minute ago, we said we're all called to work, right? But what often can happen is we can get the work as being our fulfillment center. And when work becomes our fulfillment center, it's like it's my insecurity in the sense of when I'm in some of these other places, like maybe I'm at home or I'm raising kids or I'm doing whatever, I'm not as fulfilled. Like I don't feel as adequate. Maybe I'm not as good at it. At the end of the day, like I don't like really cleaning house around here or doing laundry. It's just stuff I have to do.
Sure.
But it's because it's the menial task that I'm focusing on rather than, hey, this is really fulfilling my family. Okay.
Gotcha.
And so part of it, I think we just have to be, as you walk along and maybe you're in your 20s, mid or early 20s, and you're all excited about this thing called career. And we should be, right? Like, man, this is my funnel that I'm starting. I'm coming in wide with lots of ideas and stuff, and I'm wanting to hone in, and we want to build some excitement around that. So we get training, we get education, we try to get experiences, and we try to find things that light our fire. And I don't want to deter anybody from that. I think that's where you find really where your talents and your purpose align. Okay, so that's really important. We want to encourage our younger guys to do that. Okay, but all of a sudden, then you start to see, man, I've been dating this girl for a while, and I think maybe it's time that I ask her to marry me. Well, now you're showing that there's another purpose in your life. You're desiring another purpose. And for every purpose I take on, I have to be able to serve it well. Okay, so now not only do I have a job that I want to serve well, but I've got a wife that I want to serve well. Okay, so now I've split it in two. And then maybe down the road we add some kids. Man, I want my kids to think that I'm a good dad, right?
Sure.
And then we have our community. Right, and then we might have church. You know what I'm saying? So all of a sudden that pie starts getting split, and that's really what we're talking. It should get split. So it's not like one and none. Like it should be split. But then how well are you managing that? So anyway, by the time you get to my age, you start to see the fruit of your labor. All right, and I've said many times before, you can tell me all day long about how great a guy you are. But really, the way I would measure that is I'm going to look at the fruit of your labor. As you get older, I'm going to look at your kids. I'm going to look at how you manage your wife, that relationship. I'm going to look at that. And when those things look healthy and strong, not perfect, right?
Sure.
But healthy and strong, it's like, that guy's got his act together.
Yeah.
So we'll measure by the fruit of the labor. And if you look at your fruit and you're like, my kids don't really know who I am, like, relationship with the wife's not good, the relationship with the job's not good. Okay, what are you going to do?
Yeah, I think that when you were talking before, Merle, when you were talking about this idea of in your work, man, if your sole value, your sole worth is found in your work, how detrimental that can be to your personal life. Not obviously mentioning any names, but there's guys I work with that it's all about, okay, when I show up today, I need to achieve this in order to be happy, or I need to get this promotion in order to be happy, or whatever the case may be, and it's solely work-based. And then, I don't know to what extent on their days off what that looks like. Is it that's your sole focus even on their days off? And I think a lot of guys sometimes fall into that very idea that I need to have worth and I need to have value and bring value in my work life in order for my personal life to feel fulfilled or
right.
feel, because again, I think men were designed to work but just like you were saying before, it's when you add in all those other pieces as you progress in your career and there's more pieces of that pie that get added, when that work life is your sole fulfillment of purpose and happiness, man, I think we just miss so much good stuff that can come on, in our personal life. There's other pieces.
Yeah, and that's a really interesting topic there because we have people in our life, and again, not to mention a name, but I have tried at times to throw my value system on this person.
Yeah.
Okay, and this person works an incredible, crazy amount of hours. Okay, it's like 70, 80 hours a week. Literally, like they'll go in at 8 in the morning and won't even leave until midnight. It's just silly, crazy stuff. And for years, we were like, are you ever going to get married? Like, are you ever going to do this? And now we're talking about a guy who's in his mid-50s. So we're not talking about, well, this is just a season. And so I've come to realize, like, remember we talked about as you take something on as a purpose, like, oh, I'm taking on a wife and now that's going to be a purpose that I serve, or I'm going to take on kids and that's going to be a purpose. Where we get into trouble is when we think we should take on a responsibility and then we don't serve it well. And so I've come to realize, like, if this gentleman that I'm thinking of is like, listen, I'm not in a relationship with a lady because I would not serve her well. Like, I'm so consumed with my work, and I recognize that.
Yeah.
So really, there was a sense there that was like, you know what? He's probably doing it the right way because he knows he can't get out of his own head from his work purpose. And again, he's so excited or whatever. And we see, like, there's been kickback over the years about whether priests should marry or not. And, the idea that a priest sells out completely and lives for the marriage to the church. And so a lot of people are like, oh, he should be married or whatever. Like, well, no, like if his work is that ministry, then no, like he's fully consumed by that and he wouldn't serve. And we see that with other pastors. Pastors will tell you, it is so hard for me to balance my pastoring work because it's not set to an 8 to 5, right? It's like it's 24/7. And then I'm still trying to serve my kids and I'm trying to serve my wife. And it's really crazy. And so there is a point there where you have to allow a person to accept their own purpose design, like what they're going to say, versus me saying, to really have a fulfilling life, you should have this, and this that you serve. And at the end of the day, I don't want his life. I'm not at all jealous of the money he makes or the time he spends at work, but that's serving him. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great, great kind of an analogy to look at. Let's get into that idea that you're talking about. There's different parts, these different pieces of the pie. There's a guy that actually was just introduced to me from another guy at work. His name is Brian Buffini, and he's got a podcast called "It's a Good Life." And one of the things he talks about is that very idea of these different parts of your life, and he actually equates them into like fuel gauges. So he takes these. There's 5 different parts that he kind of breaks down life into, and then he obviously has a fuel gauge associated with them. So you're supposed to basically take an evaluation. Where do I find myself in this fuel gauge? Am I full? Am I empty? Am I half of the tank is full? And the 5 parts that you have are spirituality, personal life, family life, finances, and business. And I think it's a great, obviously, I'm sure we could come up with 100 different parts of life, but this guy, Brian Buffini, he came up with these 5 different parts of life to take a step back And he uses this to go after goals. So if you want to achieve a 10-day goal, a 10-month goal, where do you find your fuel gauge? What fuel gauge do you need to decrease in order to achieve a certain goal, or which fuel gauge do you need to increase? And I think it brings up a great, it's a good tool for us to use when it comes to this idea of work-life balance. So if you were to take your business aspect or your work, and you were to say, I'm all in, my fuel gauge is full here, right? Mm-hmm. I've heard it said before that, in order for you to be all in on your business, your work, something else has to suffer, right?
Right.
So there's going to be something else that is going to suffer. I've said it before on this show. If you want to know what a person's about, look at their schedule and their bank account. Look at their calendar. So if your calendar is full of business oriented or achieving a business or a career goal, something else has to falter, right? I know guys at work when promotional exams come up, guys at work will commit 8-10 hours a day to study.
Yeah.
And naturally, their family life suffers.
Right.
And again, I think there's something to be said about a season, right? We can have seasons where, yes, my business, my work is taking a lot of my time. Therefore, my personal life, my family life is suffering. That fuel gauge is dropping a little bit. Mm-hmm. And I think that we could talk a whole nother part about that, of the idea of investing into your family, so that way when those times do come, that their cup is still filled, right? But I think that this idea of these 5 different parts, again, it's the spiritual, the personal, the family, the finances, and the business. I think as a man, it's good for us to look at those. What part of your life, which part of those 5 is your fuel gauge full? Which parts are empty? Or are you kind of just lukewarm on all of them? Because we've talked before about the idea of being lukewarm is not what men were designed. We're not to say that we have to be all in on everything, because I truly don't think it is possible to have a full fuel gauge in all 5 aspects. Again, in this,
right.
Something has to suffer.
Well, so I'm going to challenge this a little bit, okay? So, because I'm seeing these, he's got 5 fuel gauges, right?
Right.
In these different areas. The reality of it is we only have one fuel tank.
Correct.
Right? I mean, I only have one. I'm one person. I'm one energy source.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm really, all 5 areas are actually pulling from the same tank.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Yep.
So really, equal distribution would say that I have 20% in each tank if I'm running even keel. But the reality of it is we almost never run 20% equally in everything. That would be everything's being served at the exact same level. Right. And it probably shouldn't be, right?
Yeah.
But what I have to realize is that if I'm going to put energy, so maybe I pull the tank a little bit more towards the half mark in work, that's going to come out of something else, right? So that whole idea of, I'm thinking in my mind, like, so when you're driving down the road, thinking about the fuel gauge,
I drive on empty at all times.
So I was going to, like, what's your acceptable level of empty, right? Like, I know I actually knew a guy, like, every time his fuel gauge got to a half, he was looking for a fill up. And I'm like, dude, half, like, in my mind, that's like, I'm good to go. Like, I'm waiting for the alarms and the bells and, now we've got you've got 5 miles left.
Yep.
And so I think it's important, maybe, as I look at what you're talking about there, well, what would my definition of acceptance of empty be? Like, how low should I allow? Because I know that, like, right now, I just told you, like, I got projects going on around here. And so it actually has been coming at the expense of some family stuff.
Sure.
I had to miss one of my son's wrestling meets because I've got an entire bathroom and everything tore up, and I'm looking at, okay, like, there's
only 24 hours in the day.
There's only 24 hours in a day, and this has got to be done because this is being delivered. And so that family tank had to take a hit so that I could do the project thing. So so here was kind of the point that I was thinking, like Lynn and I were talking about. I'm like, at what point do you say I'm now beyond what I'm accepting is good? Yeah. Okay, and so I'm not dismissing his gauge thing, but I'm like, no, you can't run all 5 tanks on full.
Agree 100%.
That's impossible. You're drawing from one source. Yep. So that idea, like, what would my level of acceptance be? What would be okay?
Yep. Well, it made me think. So at work, we actually have a policy written that we are not supposed to be driving our apparatus if we go below a half a tank.
Oh, wow.
And we set that because at any given time we can be called to be on a working fire, right? Or an extended incident where your vehicle is staying on because we operate and we use our vehicles. And if you're below a half a tank, I'm sure there's been stats and numbers that have been thrown that if you're on that instance for a half hour or 2 hours, however long, that fuel gauge naturally is going to continue to drop. So we actually have a policy that's put in place that at a half a tank you're supposed to go refuel.
Okay.
And I think that there is something there because, man, in your life, whatever you deem is your, okay, I'm not going to allow my personal life, I'm not going to allow that to, when I'm filling up using that big tank that we have, just we were talking about, there's only one tank, right?
Yep.
So when I use that and I'm filling up different parts of my life, man, if that part of my life is dropping below a half a tank, I need to do something about it. If that's your number, right? At work, obviously ours is a half. If you can function and still put forth the effort into your work and still put out a good product for yourself, but there's got to be the number. I think that's a great place to really discuss that, man. Maybe it's a good place to start, that you need to actually evaluate different parts of your life. What is that? So if my time spent with my family is going to drop below this, obviously it's going to suffer. If I'm going to fulfill myself with work, my family life is going to suffer. Right. So I think it's a good place to kind of start to think, like, what part of my life is it acceptable to drop to 20%, of effort? I think that's good.
And can that sustain me if I get into a long haul of that?
Yeah.
Like when I have a marriage that's kind of running close to empty and it's doing that day after day after day, eventually it's going to exhaust itself. So I do think that that's an interesting and a good solid way to look at that. Like certain areas I can let run close to empty and it's not as much of a big deal.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you a place that we sacrifice all the time, and he has listed on his gauges, the spiritual side. Mm-hmm. Like it's pretty easy when you live in a world with lots of comforts to forget about why you might need to be connected to God. Like, man, I'm busy. Like, I'll do my Bible study later, or I'll read tomorrow, or whatever. And so that's a place that I can really sometimes push real close to that empty mark.
Yeah. Well, don't you think that's also plays into just the very nature? I mean, we are human, like we're flesh, and I don't know about you guys. I need to touch and feel something in order for me to think, okay, this is
real.
It's valuable, right? And I think that goes right into the idea. Like, obviously, I can't touch Jesus, right? I can't touch his face. I don't know, what he looks like. So it's hard for me to again, just like you're saying, it's very easy to say, okay, I'll push that aside. I know right now my girls need my time. Mm-hmm. I know right now my work needs my time because I can touch, I can feel that. But then it's like when you do allow that fuel gauge of your spiritual life to kind of dwindle and almost, it is on empty.
Yeah.
Man, everything else, I don't know about you, Merle, everything else in my life just
yeah.
The domino has fallen, right? All those pieces of my life. And it's like God's like, I want to be the one that consumes your time because I'll take care of everything else.
Yeah, that is just a huge point, and we take that for granted, like that's not a big deal. And I think as part of us is wiring, this has always amazed me, and it irritates me with my wife, right? Like I'm an out of sight, out of mind kind of individual. Like if it's not in front of me, I totally. When I leave work, I leave work. Yeah. Like when I'm not around my kids and I'm doing a project, the project is my priority. Like I'm out of sight, out of my mind. and I'm not saying that's good or bad. I think that's a lot of male wiring and allows us to get that hyper focus on one thing and kind of master it. Whereas, my wife can be thinking about the kids, her job, what she's going to fix for dinner, what bill needs to be paid. And she can kind of keep that floating all around at the same time. And I'm going, stop. I can't talk about all those things.
When was the last time you were doing a project and Linda had to bring you a plate of food because you couldn't give it up to go eat dinner? Because this happens to me quite often. Jenny's like, Ava, go take this to Daddy. He's in his shop working on whatever.
So like, you hit that's a bad example for me. I joke all the time. I hear people say, I was so busy, I forgot to eat. I'm like,
no, that's me.
That's never happened to me.
That's me.
That's never, ever, I've never forgotten to eat. So that's a bad example for me.
I do that all the time, Merle.
Do you really?
Oh, my goodness. If I'm ingrained and I'm in a project, I'm for sure, I got my cup of coffee in the morning and I'm starting a project. there's not a snowball's chance I'm actually going and eating lunch. Not going to happen. And dinner, Jenny will be like, Ava, go take this plate
I
to
don't
Daddy.
like people like you, man. Like, see, I'm one of those guys that I'm wired. I don't eat breakfast, so I intermittent fast. I've not eaten breakfast for a number of years now. And so the idea of not eating lunch just cut my leg off. That's terrible. So
I grab a Dr. Pepper instead. Dr. Pepper.
No, see,
Okay.
no, that's not me. But yeah, there's other things out of sight, out of mind, and I think when you allow something to be out of mind long enough, you kind of start to become distant to it, and the next thing you know, well, I didn't know that I wasn't taking care of my relationship with my wife, or I just kept pushing it aside, So anyway, let's kind of bring this down and talk about some things to help our guys out there recognize how they can right the ship and get things back in line, okay? So I think the very first thing is hearing a show like this, it's time to evaluate a little bit. Whether you throw the 5 gauges up in front of you or you look at the clock and you say, okay, I'm going to break my day up into I got sleep hours, I got work hours, I got whatever, assess what you are doing in a general trend, not just today, because a one-day thing you can't get a good glimpse with most of our life. But what's your general trend looking like? All right. And is it okay? Is it okay with you? Is it okay with you and your wife? I think it's really important that we bring our wives into these conversations because their perspective might be very different. I might look at my clock or my gauges and go, it seems to be working for me. And my wife says, I think your gauge is empty in this family thing or, that kind of thing. So evaluate.
Man, Merle, when you're talking about this idea of, the clock, analogy of putting time aside for sleep, firsthand, I know when I don't sleep, everything else in my life suffers.
Oh, yeah.
Everything. And I think, when it comes out of evaluation, I think the idea of sleep and rest has to be one of the top priorities. It has to be, man, the old whatever, he was hangry, right? I mean, he was hungry, hungry and he was tired, right? I think the rest, it is something that a lot of times when it comes to the different parts of your life, the different things that you fulfill and you put in there, sleep, because again, there is only 24 hours a day. I think sleep gets put, again, secondary, it gets pushed back.
Oh, yeah. And
then it's like, okay, well, I need to do this project at work. I need to give up sleep. And I think the sleep is one of the ones that gets taken right away. And in reality, obviously they know science would tell you that sleep is so beneficial to people. But I mean, I whatever, I know they say whatever 8 hours a day is right. what you're supposed to get. So if we take 8 hours, we're down to 16 hours in a day to try and fulfill with the rest of the things that we need to actually accomplish today. But I think the rest has to be a part of your day-to-day stuff. It has to be.
Yeah, and so once you evaluate that, it's time to own it. I mean, we have to own it, and the way I own it is I stop excuses. Like you mentioned before, seasons. Man, I am guilty of saying this is a season, this too shall pass kind of thing. And a lot of things are just seasons, okay? But sometimes when you look back and you go, yeah, this season doesn't seem to ever be ending, or you're not doing what you need to do to make it end, all right?
Or your wife says that. Your wife is like, that season's got to stop, right?
You've said for the last 6 months that this work schedule is going to change and nothing's changed, okay? So I have to own that, all right, and put away the excuses. After that, it's time to now actually define what is acceptable, okay? And we look at calendars to do that. Like I think I've showed you before, shown you at different times. Because I'm not always great at this, I've actually had to use my phone calendar to put simple things on there that might look ridiculous or silly to somebody else. Like I have on my calendar, in fact, today is the day. Today is work or lunch with Linda, right? And I put that on there because if it's not on there, I will just fill it with something else.
Yep.
And so this is a day that we're recording that I have a designated lunch. I have a designated workout time that goes on my calendar. All right. Every day I have a workout time that's on there. All right. There's, the kids' schedules, all of those things. That's being intentional, putting absolutes in that you have to do it. And even with that, it doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. It's like I'm 58 years old. It took me that long to figure out I better start prioritizing.
Yeah. Well, that idea that you were talking about when it comes to like the kids' schedules, how many couples, how many families have you seen come through yours and Linda's door where it's the kids' sports schedule have completely that tank is full.
Yeah.
Right. We have filled that up to the max. And again, at what cost? So then the cost is the marriage. The cost is, finances, right? Because obviously we all know sports can cost a lot of money.
Right.
I mean, you guys, I'm sure, see that all the time.
We see it all the time, and it's really totally warped in the sense of the priority, because it teaches our kids how to have a very warped sense of, first off, who they are in the realm of the family. Like, all of a sudden, they're the most important thing. Mom, I have to go to practice. Mom, I've got a game. Mom, and so that idea that they think that it's all about them is one reason why that's a negative. But two, it's like you said before, it comes at the cost of something. And I'm okay with the idea that we run certain things for a season, knowing that our kids know why we're doing that. So like we will say, listen, you're going to, you can play this sport, this season, but here's what it's costing us. And we don't rub it in their face. We want them to know, like, okay, this is what the whole family is going to be dealing with. We got practices 5 days a week. We got this and we got that. So what are we going to do? Mom and dad's work schedules have to change. We want them to know so that there's a level of appreciation. And then when we ask them to do something, they know, hey, no kickback. Look what we've been giving to you. This is the dance that we have in a family.
And also, I mean, obviously, our kids that they have tanks that are so if they've committed so much effort into whatever sporting event or whatever activity they're doing, maybe it's the schoolwork that gets put behind. And in my house that we prioritize our making sure the homework's done. We have to get that done before we can go into the activities. So I think it's important to realize that every person, every member of your family has fuel tanks, has the clock on the wall that they have to evaluate. What are we going to give? We're going to commit this much time and effort into this, and then obviously something else is going to falter. But again, I think the idea of the season, I think that's a great place to really know that if there's a season in time that you're committing a lot of time and effort into something, that's okay. But again, something at what cost?
Yeah. Another part of this is being very intentional about what you're going to serve in your life and how you're going to do it. Okay. So here's one of the things that we're guilty of around here. If somebody gives me a call and says, hey, you want to go camping here, in April or whatever, and a knee-jerk reaction would be like, oh, dude, that sounds cool.
Awesome.
Let's go ahead and do it. Just go ahead and book it. I'll figure it out later.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've learned,
Guilty.
Well, we're all guilty of that because it's almost an impulse sort of decision, right? We let the dopamine start flying, like, man, that sounds cool. I'd love to do that. And we say yes. And then all of a sudden that weekend comes. That weekend comes and it's like, oh, crud. I got a kid's soccer game. I'm supposed to speak at church. I'm supposed to do this. And that's where I'm at right now. I told you at the beginning, like I just a month ago, everything sounded like a great idea. And I said, yes. And now I'm like going, oh, crud. And I got empty on several of my fuel tanks while I'm dumping into this other. And so trying to be more intentional rather than impulsive.
Yep, I love it. Yeah, man, I hope you guys can relate to some of the stuff, some of the struggles of this idea of work-life balance.
I'm just glad we don't struggle with it.
Yeah,
right?
I'm so glad. So glad. For me, as you're talking about saying yes to stuff, I have a lot of single friends. And they're living the bachelor life.
Those are the worst.
And they're like, hey, bro, let's do this. I'm like, yes, full send, right? I'm in. And then Jenny's like, hey, while you were out there living the bachelor life, right? I'm sitting at home taking care of all the kiddos.
That's right. Yeah. And then we act like we're entitled to it. Well, come on now. I mean, I only do this once a year. And again, I'm not saying whether you should or you shouldn't. I'm saying is when you start to bring things in your life that you say are going to have purpose, then you have to start allowing fuel at a certain level to feed that. And that's the balance. That's the hard thing. So anyway, hopefully, this was a thought-provoking sort of conversation for you as Kyle and I both were just working through this. And this is not something you're going to get in line and it's going to be perfect and run right.
Got to do this reevaluation, just like we're doing.
Right. And
come back to it.
Be willing to do that. Look at those gauges, and when you see, or your wife is reading to you like, man, this is not quite in good balance here, don't look the other way, because there's nothing worse than being stranded out on the road by yourself because you ran out of fuel. And that's a terrible place to be in marriage and life. Yeah. And so that's not a place where any of us want to be.
I like it. So before we get out of here, we forgot to do at the beginning of the show. We had a local guy, right? We had a local guy.
Go Nick Gepper.
There we go. Yeah,
Nick Gepper.
Another. He got a silver medal, correct, in the skiing.
He did in the free slope style ski event in the Olympics. Got a silver medal, and so I don't want to name drop or anything, but
what you got there?
I'm friends with Nick. And
did you text him?
I did. I texted him. I said, "Great job, Nick. Congrats, Nick. First class. So proud of you." And he says back, "What?"
Thanks, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thanks, Mr. Hutchinson from Beijing, right there, buddy.
That's cool.
The reason why that's worth celebrating is Nick comes from a fantastic family, parents who just have gone above and beyond to be good, solid parents. And so I've known that family for a long time.
That's cool.
Nick went through our school that I worked at and stuff. First class. So congratulations to those folks, that family, and that whole experience. That's what happens when you work together as a family. That was, for him to even do what he does in that level, it was a family event.
That's cool.
So it was pretty cool.
That's cool. Yep. So thanks so much, guys. Thanks so much for listening to us. Tune in every week. We keep putting shows out there. Share the heck out of our shows. Really do appreciate Casey's Outdoor Solutions and Crimer's Beer House for coming alongside of us. We couldn't do what we do without you. So thanks so much for them. We good?
Yeah, we're good. So go out there and be a strong dad. Now I got to get back to that project and get it done before I'm dry
Fix
and
that
empty.
Floor.
I know. Should I do that or not? I don't know. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.